Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for being able to join us today. So this webinar series is going to touch on the work of CoSA, both in Ottawa and across the country. Today, we'll be focusing on CoSA Ottawa and understanding reintegration and our role in that process. To get started, I'd just like to start with a land acknowledgement. So we acknowledge that we are gathered on the traditional and unceded territories of the Algonquin Anishinaabe people. The Algonquin people have lived on this land since time immemorial. We are grateful to have the opportunity to be present in this territory. This is just a quick agenda of what we'll be touching on today. So I'll just jump right in. So what is CoSA? CoSA Ottawa is a community-based reintegration program that supports individuals returning to the community after serving a sentence for sexual offenses. Our focus is on safe, supported reintegration while always keeping community safety at the center of our work. A key message here is that reintegration is not something that people should do alone. Many core members are leaving environments that are highly structured and are returning to communities where they may have very limited supports, isolation, or instability. At CoSA Ottawa, we respond to that gap by surrounding each core member with a small circle of community volunteers. These circles are intentionally small and consistent, and they are designed to provide three key elements. So the first element is support. This includes both practical and emotional encouragement as someone rebuilds their life. That might include helping someone navigate community services, establish routines, or simply having regular, reliable contact with someone. The second piece is accountability. This is a core part of our program. Volunteers engage in honest, respectful conversations that encourage safer decision-making and reflection on behavior and risk. And the last piece is community connection. Many of our core members experience deep isolation. The circle helps reduce isolation and supports a sense of belonging in the community, which is an important protective factor in reintegration. Together, these elements work to support safer communities, reduce isolation, and strengthen community safety through connection rather than exclusion. I wanted to spend a little bit of time just talking about reintegration and the reality of reintegration. So people who are released from prison often encounter significant and immediate barriers when they return to the community. Even when someone is motivated to change, the practical realities of reintegration can make stability very difficult to achieve. One of the most common challenges is housing. Many individuals face discrimination when trying to find a place to live, and it's not uncommon for landlords to refuse applications once a criminal record is disclosed. This can lead to instability or reliance on temporary housing options. Another major barrier is employment. Background checks can limit access to job opportunities, even for entry-level work. Without stable employment, it becomes much harder to establish routine, independence, and financial security. This connects to that third challenge, which is limited income and financial instability. Many individuals are released with very little savings, and it can take time before income is secured. And this gap can create stress and increase vulnerability for the people we're supporting. Finally, there's often a lack and a loss of social networks. Relationships with family, friends, or community supports have been strained or completely lost while an individual has been incarcerated, and this can leave individuals isolated when they need support most. Together, these barriers can significantly impact reintegration outcomes. This is part of why community-based supports like CoSA Ottawa focus not only on that accountability piece, but also on reducing isolation and helping people build stable pro-social connections in the community. For individuals convicted of sexual offenses, reintegration can be even more challenging, and this is due to stigma and restrictions. One of the most significant barriers is severe social stigma and public fear. This can lead to rejection from community, services, and potential supports, making it extremely difficult for individuals to establish any sense of belonging or stability. One example here is that a lot of our individuals are not able to access community centers, and a lot of supports that are relevant to them might take place in those spaces. And so they're just not able to attend or participate in those types of activities. I think specifically about Wabano, it's a community center. A lot of our individuals that are Indigenous are not able to access that support at all. So, as a result, many individuals experience deep isolation and loneliness. This is not just social isolation, but often a lack of meaningful, positive contact in the community, which can increase vulnerability during reintegration. There are also important mental health considerations, including feelings of shame, anxiety, and depression. These emotional challenges can be intensified by both the offense history and the experiences of reintegration itself. There are also practical restrictions related to parole conditions. For example, conditions may limit or closely monitor internet use. While these conditions are obviously in place for public safety and have a reason, they can also create barriers to everyday reintegration tasks, such as looking for employment, applying for housing, accessing any services online, or reconnecting with supports. I'd say this is one of the biggest challenges we do see is that lack of internet access. You can't walk into a business establishment these days and apply for a job. Everything is online. So this is where structured, supervised community supports like CoSA become important because we provide a safe, accountable space for connection while respecting legal conditions and prioritizing community safety. So this might look like a volunteer bringing their laptop to a meeting and doing an online job search with the core member sitting beside them, or typing up their resume, really anything that's going to make that barrier a little bit smaller. So, who are our core members? The individuals we are supporting have been convicted of and admit to a sexual offense. They've been incarcerated either in the federal or the provincial system. The majority of the individuals we're working with right now have been incarcerated federally. They may have been detained to the end of their sentence, which means they did not have a gradual re-entry into society. They are considered at risk to reoffend and has high needs. This might look like not just reintegration needs, but also mental health. They may have a disability. They have little or no support in the community. They participate voluntarily in our program. And the majority of the individuals we are supporting right now are male. So our circle work is the core of what we do with core members. But in addition to this work, we also offer a range of practical supports that help address real-world barriers during reintegration. We provide resources and referrals to essential services, helping core members connect with housing supports, health services, community programs, and other needed systems. And this helps reduce gaps in access and support stability. We also offer clothing and well-being activities, which can include basic material supports, as well as opportunities that promote healthy routines, engagement, and positive use of time. Our holiday meal program ensures that core members are not isolated during times of the year that can be particularly difficult, reinforcing a sense of dignity and inclusion. We also offer social programming, which creates additional supports and opportunities for safe pro-social connection. So this would be our walking group that meets 3 to 4 times a month and takes a 45-minute walk together. We have monthly social gatherings, which is typically gathering, having snacks, playing board games, being out in nature. And finally, when possible, we provide modest financial support to help address urgent or short-term needs that could otherwise become barriers to stability. So this might look like grocery gift cards, transportation funds, purchasing clothing for employment if needed. Together, these supports complement circle work by addressing both relational and practical needs, which helps to create more stable conditions for reintegration, while maintaining our focus on accountability and community safety. So in terms of our core members and some of the numbers around that, last year we supported 22 core members. On average, we work with 15 to 25 core members per year. I think this year we're probably on track to be a bit closer to 30. 98% of the individuals we're supporting have a mental health diagnosis, and a significant portion of them also have a disability. So they may be receiving Ontario Disability Support Program as their income. 70% of the individuals we're working with experienced abuse in their childhood or adolescence. And on average, the age of the individuals we're supporting is 45, but we are starting to see an increase in a younger demographic of individuals accessing supports. So a circle typically includes 2 to 3 trained volunteers, one core member, and then a CoSA staff, which would be myself. The small size of the circle is important. It allows relationships to form while still maintaining clear boundaries and accountability within a structured model. Each circle has 4 goals. So the first is to provide support. This includes emotional encouragement, practical guidance, and consistent presence as the core member navigates reintegration. The second is to discuss challenges open and honestly. The circle provides a structured space where difficulties can be talked about in a respectful and non-judgmental way, rather than avoided or escalated. The third is to encourage responsible choices, so that accountability piece again. So volunteers and staff work together to support reflection, planning, and decision-making that promotes safety and stability. And again, that accountability piece. So this is a key part of the model. Accountability is not only about punishment, but about honest conversation, reflection on risk, and supporting safe behavior moving forward. Overall, the circle functions as a balance of support and accountability, with the goal of strengthening reintegration and contributing to safer communities. In the image on here, you'll see there's kind of 2 circles. So we have that inner circle, which is the staff, the core member, and the volunteers. And then on the outside, we have what we call the outer circle, which is the professional supports, the psychologists, the parole officers, law enforcement, and they're also somewhat a part of the circle as well. We often have interaction with law enforcement as well as the parole officers to have discussions about core member progress or any challenging behaviors or concerns. And so we all try to work together as best we can to bring the best outcome for the individuals that we're supporting. So a little bit about our volunteers. All of our volunteers are trained and screened, so they all participate in a training program and then an interview, as well as reference checks and a criminal record check. They're committed to accountability, respect, and non-judgmental support. Volunteers work to build respectful professional relationships with the core member. The emphasis is on consistency, boundaries, and trust within a clear, defined role. These are not informal or casual relationships, but structured relationships grounded in accountability and support. On the day-to-day, volunteers offer encouragement and accountability. This can include conversations about choices, coping strategies, routines, and responding to challenges that arise. They also support goal setting and connection to community services, helping the core member identify and access resources that support stability, such as housing supports, health services, or community programs. And some of our volunteers even attend appointments with our core members, whether that's with their probation officer or at the Royal Ottawa Hospital, or taking them grocery shopping because a lot of our core members don't have a vehicle. We have some volunteers that will transport clients to their appointments or to the grocery store and back to their living arrangement. Volunteers also have an important responsibility to observe and communicate concerns. This is done within the circle and with staff support, ensuring that all issues related to risk or well-being are addressed promptly. One of the most immediate impacts volunteers have is reducing isolation and loneliness for core members. Many individuals returning to the community have very limited social supports, if any at all. And consistent pro-social contact can be stabilizing and protective. Volunteers also play a key role in supporting safer decision making and accountability through regular conversations and structured engagement. They encourage reflection, responsibility, and planning for safer choices in daily life. At a broader level, volunteers help strengthen protective factors in the community. This includes building pro-social relationships, reinforcing accountability, and supporting inclusion in a way that promotes long-term safety. All of these factors contribute to a reduced risk of reoffending, which is a key outcome of the CoSA model, alongside reintegration and community connection. To put this impact into perspective, last year, CoSA Ottawa volunteers contributed over 1,500 hours of their time to supporting safer communities. This was in circle meetings, one-on-one meetings, at social programming events, um, and just the general support that they provided to our core members. This reflects a significant commitment from community members who choose to actively participate in restorative justice and community safety work. I want to introduce everyone to Dave. So this slide here introduces Dave as a case example to help illustrate the realities of reintegration and the kinds of circumstances we encounter when supporting a core member. So Dave has just been released on day parole for his second federal offense. At this stage, he's living in a halfway house in Ottawa and beginning the process of trying to rebuild his life in the community under supervision and structured conditions. As CoSA staff begin working with Dave, we also start to understand his life experience, as well as some of the challenges that have shaped his background and his reintegration experience. Dave grew up in foster care, where he experienced instability from an early age. His childhood also included experience of sexual abuse, which has had a long-term impact on his well-being and development. In addition to these personal and historical factors, Dave also has very limited external supports. He has no family, few healthy or stable connections, and upon release has no savings or a reliable source of income. Throughout his life, Dave has struggled with ongoing mental health challenges, including anxiety and depression. These are important factors to consider in understanding how he navigates stress, relationships, and changes during reintegration. Dave's wife passed away while he was incarcerated, and he has one friend in Ottawa that he still has contact with. During his previous release in the community, Dave was not connected to CoSA Ottawa. He was connected to some community-based supports, but admits that he was not fully engaged in those supports. He was not 100% honest and open, and he became increasingly isolated, struggled to cope, and ultimately reoffended. This time, Dave connects with CoSA very early upon release. After his initial intake, he's assigned 3 volunteers who begin meeting with him regularly, and they each bring a unique set of skills and perspective that support Dave. So while Dave is involved with CoSA, his volunteers and CoSA staff help him transition successfully from the halfway house into housing, access clothing and basic necessities, find healthy activities and routines, including puzzles and library visits, navigate the community through accompaniment and support, and celebrate milestones like his birthday, helping him seen, feel valued, and connection. So in this slide here, we see at his first release, he was not involved with CoSA. He had limited accountability or pro-social connections. He felt isolated. He had barriers to stability, and his risk factors went left unaddressed. Once he's involved with CoSA, he's attending bi-weekly meetings and weekly one-on-one meetings with his volunteers. He's feeling connected and is accessing community supports, and he's actively taking accountability for his past actions. Our work is rooted in accountability and reintegration, but meaningful reintegration also requires practical support, human connection, and dignity. Many core members have experienced profound isolation and instability long before release into the community. More than a year after his release, Dave continues to actively engage with CoSA and remains connected to his circles and supports as well as CoSA staff. While every reintegration journey is different, stories like Dave's highlight the importance of long-term community support. CoSA's work focuses on reducing isolation, strengthening accountability, and helping individuals build safer, healthier lives in the community. So, ways you can support CoSA. You can volunteer, you can join a circle and work directly with individuals reintegrating into the community. You can make a donation, which supports resources, volunteer training, as well as supporting core members who are in financial need. And you can spread awareness. You can share our work. We're on social media, Facebook, LinkedIn, and Instagram. You can share some of the work that we've been doing today through this presentation, as well as some of our other marketing materials that will be available later this week, because spreading awareness reduces stigma. Now, at this point, I'm very excited to introduce Amber, who's a longtime volunteer with CoSA Ottawa. Amber has been involved with CoSA for nearly 10 years, which represents an incredible commitment of time and energy and community service. Over that time, she has supported CoSA's work through direct circle participation and has seen firsthand how the model evolves alongside core members as they reintegrate into community. Amber's experience brings valuable perspective on what CoSA looks like in practice beyond the theory and beyond the structure, and how meaningful relationships, consistency, and accountability come together in real life. I'm very grateful that Amber is here to share her experience as a volunteer and to help us deepen our understanding of CoSA's work from the perspective of someone who has been directly involved for so many years. Amber, thank you for being here. I think a good place to start is what inspired you to get involved with CoSA and what keeps you committed to volunteering?
So thank you for having me today, Michaela, and thank you to those that are able to attend and listen into this important topic of conversation. So what inspired me to get involved with CoSA Ottawa? It was actually during my university studies. So while I was studying at the University of Ottawa in December of 2013, I found myself writing a research paper on the effectiveness of circles of support and accountability, specifically for an individual intervention and criminology course. So, when I was putting this paper together, I argued that the general public believes that individuals who commit sexual offenses are untreatable and are destined to fail over and over again. So, through my research from various sources, I was able to see that programs like Circles of Support and Accountability are an effective practice that are structured around restorative justice principles that not only reduce recidivism by up to 80%, but they also further assist those participating to become active members of society, and they create the grounds to encourage a pro-social life while also ensuring the safety of others. So following this and doing the research, I knew when I was in university that I wanted to get involved in a program like Circles of Support and Accountability. And luckily enough, we do have one here in Ottawa. So that is how I first started to learn about what types of programs are out there specifically for individuals that are justice involved. And then it really sparked my interest to be able to not only continue to spread and make people aware of the type of work that's being done in our community, but to also be able to give back to this justice involved population and be part of that piece of the puzzle that helps with their reintegration.
I think too, Amber, you've touched on something that's really important, is that education piece. And also, we are really connected with the post-secondary institutions here in Ottawa, and that is where we get a lot of our volunteers from. They're studying criminology, social work, psychology, and they either hear about us through a presentation or they happen to have a professor who's a volunteer with us, and that's how they end up becoming involved.
Yeah.
Amber, how would you describe your role as a CoSA volunteer in your own words?
How I would describe my role is it's twofold. So one is providing that support directly to the core member, holding them accountable, and helping them work through the challenges and barriers that they face while trying to reintegrate into society, but also ensuring that there's no more victims moving forward and that we create a safer community. But then the other part of my role too is that education piece. So over the past almost 10 years that I've been volunteering, I've seen a variety of different types of core members that I've worked with. I've been in a number of different circles. But one thing that always remains is that the greater public have a very, I would say, a misunderstanding of core members and individuals that are involved in programs like Circles of Support and Accountability. So, my role as a volunteer is to also educate society as a whole, really bring into perspective what it is that these core members experience and go through, and try and shift some of that judgment that we're seeing and what support is required from the community to ensure that programs like this continue to exist and continue to be able to provide that support. Again, it all relates back to the community safety piece. And a big way of doing that is to educate others on that as well.
Which kind of leads into my next question. So, from your experience, what are some of the biggest barriers people face when returning to the community after incarceration?
So you touched on quite a few in your presentation, but some of the underlying barriers that we see is one of the biggest ones to start off with upon immediate release is obtaining government identification. A lot of individuals that are justice involved have spent time incarcerated. They go into custody without having identification or it gets lost along the way. And in order for them to make the steps towards positive change and reintegration, such as obtaining housing, getting employment, getting connected to other community resources, they need identification to be able to do that. So being able to go through service navigation, obtaining government ID, housing is another big barrier that a lot of individuals face, especially those that spend a longer time in custody. That period of trying to reintegrate back into the community after being in such a structured living environment and adjusting to life on their own and being able to successfully be housed can often be a barrier. Michaela's already touched on as well the financial piece. Employment is a big one. Employment is hard for anybody that has a criminal record and is trying to reintegrate. But a lot of the times, when you add in the added component that these individuals have a history of sexual related offenses, that can be an even bigger added barrier. Just to speak to, for example, individuals that have justice involvement, at some point during their life, they would be eligible for a record suspension. So, what that will do is it will seal their criminal record. However, for individuals that have been convicted of sexual offenses, the same doesn't apply to them. They can still get a record check completed and it'll show that there has been a record sealed and that they have been convicted of a sexual offense. So, there's continued added barriers for employment for these individuals. Service navigation in general. Again, this is speaking to a lot of the individuals we see that spend more time in custody. When you're trying to reintegrate back into society, trying to navigate all the different community resources that are out there, those for mental health support, programs like CoSA, those that are cultural programs, can be very hard for individuals to know who the right people are to go to and ask for help and how to get connected to these programs. Another big one I see too is being able to establish a social network. So, social network is not just talking about your pro social peers, such as family and friends, but also getting connected to the right resources within the community to maintain that reintegration, to reduce the likelihood of recidivating. And then structure is another big one too. So, again, this speaks a lot more to your individuals. Like Michaela brought up, some people are held until their warrant expiry date. So if they are held that long within custody and they don't have that period of a gradual release back into the community, trying to create structure in the community when you're trying to learn who the right people are to go to, when you're trying to develop that social network, it can be very challenging for these individuals.
And I think that speaks to where we come in because we are connected to those social supports and those community supports. And so when we're
Mhm.
meeting with someone, we're making those recommendations for them. And sometimes it's going as far as, do you want me to take you to this place and introduce you
Right.
to this worker? Would that make this easier for you? Would that make you more comfortable?
Correct.
Amber, how does isolation impact reintegration and how does CoSA address that?
So isolation for these individuals and how that impacts their reintegration is so without a support network in place, individuals who are facing challenges in their everyday lives, such as not having someone to talk to, can actually result in them trying to find coping mechanisms, some of which may not be pro-social, and then can open that door to engaging in risky behavior or going back on their offense path. So when you take someone that has been in such a structured environment, when they've been in custody, whether that's provincial or federal, they're constantly around people. They have supports like psychiatrists, psychologists, social workers, rehabilitation officers, parole officers. But when you take that away and you release them into the community without any supports from family, friends, or community programs, they are then left to face challenges on their own. And we know how that can be for individuals who don't know how to communicate what sort of challenges they're facing. If they feel they have no one to go to and talk to, oftentimes they will find coping mechanisms, which again could result in them going right back onto their offense path. CoSA helps address that because we are that social network for these core members. We are those people that they can go to and talk to. We create that consistency of not having them be isolated through they have a circle of volunteers, there's community social gatherings they can go to. So they always have people they can rely on to talk to when they are facing challenges and even when they're not facing challenges. So CoSA definitely helps alleviate that isolation piece that a lot of these individuals will face.
You touched on this a little bit earlier, but I want to take a bit of a deeper dive. You were talking about that education piece that you engage in with people in terms of the misunderstanding of the people that we're supporting. So I'm wondering if you can talk a little bit about what people most often misunderstand about CoSA or the people that we're working with.
So what I would say is what people often misunderstand both about CoSA and the individuals that we are helping within this program is that people cannot change and that people are not deserving of a second chance, especially for those that have committed sexual offenses. Those that are involved in the criminal justice system already face numerous barriers, including the stigmatization involved around that. But when you add the added piece that they've been convicted of a sexual offense, a lot of people have a misunderstanding of what that entails. A lot of people automatically go from 0 to 100 and assume the worst case scenario. Um, and so there's not even that openness to accept from a non judgmental approach these individuals and understand that, yes, they have committed a sexual offense. Yes, they are justice involved, but they are wanting to change. They are wanting to be rehabilitated. They want to reintegrate. So, how can we be there to support them with that? Another big misunderstanding is that people don't realize that core members have a past history. A lot of them have been a victim themselves. Michaela mentioned in her presentation right now, the core member population we're seeing in Ottawa, 70% have experienced victimization and abuse themselves. And a lot of people don't understand that. So when you pair that with some of their upbringing, past history, and experiences they've dealt with, it can make it even more challenging to lead a life where they don't end up in the justice system. Another thing, too, is a lot of people tend to put everyone in the same box versus understanding that each individual has their own story to tell. I've been in 5 different circles. Every single core member are all very different. Yes, they all fit the eligibility criteria because they've committed a sexual offense, but their history and their individual stories are all so different. The challenges and struggles they face, what goals they're trying to work on are all so different. So I think people need to understand that we need to look at it from an individual lens versus a collective lens. And that's also where it comes in the importance of approaching it from a non judgmental approach.
I think it's not shocking to people that we still continue to struggle with financial stability within our program since the conclusion of the federal funding. I'm wondering if you can talk a little bit about why it's important to invest in a program like CoSA.
Um, for one, right out of the get go, programs like CoSA, they work. They do reduce recidivism. So if we are wanting to have not only individuals change and not continuously end up in that revolving door of the criminal justice system, but if we want safer communities, we need programs like CoSA because they do work. It's been proven that they do work and that they reduce recidivism. Um, the other thing, too, is Circles of Support and Accountability. It's an organization that allows core members to have a voice and to be part of an organization that's non-judgmental and advocates for no more victims, but also being there one step at a time to assist these individuals with their successful reintegration. The other thing that I would say too is we've been seeing a lot of budget cuts within other departments in the government, both at the provincial and at the federal level. So if you're losing supports in different government departments that would provide support to these individuals, why not invest that into a community agency that we see already is doing the work and it's working? So when you're seeing cuts elsewhere, how is that going to affect the population that we're helping within CoSA? And if we're already doing the work to ensure that we're creating safer communities, we're helping these individuals to become rehabilitated and reintegrate, why not continue to invest in CoSA?
I think too, we operate on such a shoestring budget. Like we are able to do so much with our core members for so little.
Right.
Um, it's a drop in the bucket for a lot of government departments or ministries. It only really costs $150,000 a year to keep a site open, and a lot of that is staff costs because you need trained, experienced professionals guiding the volunteers and assessing the core members. But at the end of the day, it is such a small amount, but the impact that we're making in the community is huge.
Mhm.
Amber, I have one last question for you. So in one or two sentences, why does COSA matter?
So at at this point I feel like I do often repeat myself, but with Circles of Support and Accountability Ottawa, it truly does make communities safer by reducing recidivism, but it also starts to change the narrative and understanding of those that are justice involved, especially for our core members. Um, Programs like CoSA Ottawa matter because they continue to work and they continue to make our communities a safer place.
Amber, it's so clear to me. I mean, I know you a little bit more personally because we've worked together in circles, but it's so clear to me how committed you are to COSA. And I mean, 10 years is an incredible amount of time. I hope you continue to stay for maybe another 10 more.
Of course.
But I just want to really thank you for being willing to come on here today and to share about your experience with COSA, as well as really focusing on that education piece that we really want to keep driving so that we can, one, continue to provide the best supports possible for our core members, but also two, to keep our doors open and stay operational because we are just so committed to that public safety piece.
Right. Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Thank you to everyone that joined today. We do have a second part of the series coming up on May 25th, and that is going to be COSA across Canada. And so I'm hoping to have a really great, rich panel of COSA coordinators from across the country who are going to be able to talk about the experience in their program, as well as some of the innovation that's going on across the country that goes above and beyond just that core circle work. So thank you, everybody.